All right, we're going to talk a little bit about culpable negligence here. So what actually happened is that these birth control pills don't actually prevent, a pregnancy. It will kill the baby at the implantation stage, 6, 7, 8 days after the conception occurred, right? And if you say to yourself, the conception is prevented, the birth control pill will stop the fertilization. That's not actually true, right? That's not true at all. Right, and the doctors know this, but they will, shield behind the industry definition of implantation as being the starting of a pregnancy and all that stuff. It's just nonsense, right? So this is just not true, right? So what would be needed to establish culpable negligence in the culpable, gross medical negligence that would be, culpable, right? How would we define that as being, as if she would be culpable? And she certainly is. I mean, but to establish that legally, it requires um, this here, right? So in this context, right, culpable negligence in this context would only be established if several demanding legal elements were satisfied simultaneously. First, there must be a recognized legal duty of care owed to a legally protected person. Wait a minute, a legally protected person? Yeah, but this is a microscopic embryo, right? Okay, so that means it's not a person? Wait a minute here. About that, one would be correct to point out that personhood is not something granted by government, but something intrinsic to the human being by virtue of their biological nature. Okay? Under that view, once a distinct human organism exists, beginning at fertilization, it possesses he or she. I'm going to put this he or she because this is an embryo. He or she possesses inherent moral status and the right to life. Okay, it doesn't matter what the government says, right? Regardless of whether a particular legal system recognizes that status. Law in this framework does not create rights. It either recognizes or fails to recognize pre-existing natural rights. Therefore, if a sovereign nation permits the termination of embryonic life, that legal permission does not negate the existence of the right itself. It simply reflects a failure, a failure that legal system to protect an objectively existing human being. This argument is grounded in natural law tradition, where human dignity and the right to life are universal and inalienable, not contingent upon statutory definition or political consensus. All that to say is the government is wrong, right? You're not going to be able to convince any reasonable person that this, embryo, microscopic or not, is not a person and doesn't hold any kind of value because it's just not true, right? So that's the first incorrect premise here. So there is a legally recognized, sorry, a recognized legal duty of care, and then a legally protected person because legally, all right, there is. It's just a failure, a a legal error to not have this person constitutionally protected, right? Like it is in this country where I am here. I'm standing on the soil. I'm in my office. In my office here, on the soil, there's a constitutionally recognized right to life from conception. It says so right in the Constitution of this country where I am here. So if they are in error, right? They have erred in their determination, and it's an error, right? They are mistaken, right? They are mistaken in saying that an embryo is doesn't have the rights, but they do, right? They do have the right to life. That means the embryo at fertilization would need to be recognized in law, and they're not by error, as rights-bearing human being. Without legal personhood at that stage, there is no legally cognizable victim, and negligence, simple or culpable, cannot attach in criminal form. So is that my fault that the law has erred in this determination in their conclusion that the embryonic life is unworthy of protection and rights. No, this is just, some sort of where it comes from. It comes from that Morgenthaler guy, right? That's where this all, comes from. It comes from Margaret Sanger and all this, that one, and then Morgenthaler and all these, pro death activists, or pro-choice or pro-death activists or whatever. Um, but anyway, now, second, there must be foreseeable to substantial risk of serious harm. It would not be enough to argue theoretical possibility. You need to, sorry, you would need credible scientific evidence showing that the drug creates a measurable risk of post-fertilization embryonic death beyond natural background rates. And that is talked about in the FDA's own publication, but scientific evidence is obtainable, right? This is certainly obtainable. And third, there must be knowledge of that risk. So either she's grossly incompetent or she knows, right? So which one is it, right? She knows, right? Of course she knows. She knows that there's a risk of embryonic death. There is there because that's the that's how she knows about that, right? So this requires the evidence that physicians, regulators, or manufacturers are aware that fertilization can occur during use, and that endometrial alteration could prevent implantation. You know what? I'm just critical of this. The only reason that I'm critical of this is, let's say they don't know, then they were, negligent, that they don't even know what kind of drug they're prescribing. So let's put a pin on this number three here. I'll do a little bit more research about that, because I mean the knowledge of that risk. So I mean guaranteed like 99% that she knows that this will cause early embryonic death, but that 1% that she's grossly negligent, that she doesn't even know the mechanism of action of the birth control pill, right? So there's that 1% chance that she doesn't know. So does the requirement, you know, but anyway, let's put a pin on that. And most crucial for culpable negligence here, there must be constant disregard or reckless indifference to that known substantial risk, right? What is she doing? She's prescribing again and again and again and again and again to hundreds of different women, knowing that this drug will cause embryonic death. Okay, this is what distinguishes culpable negligence from simple negligence. It is not a mere oversight or failure to appreciate a risk. It is proceeding despite awareness of a serious and unjustifiable danger to life. Okay. Finally, there must be causation, proof that the conduct materially contributed to the death of a legally recognized person. And that we talked about a little bit in my previous video. We talked a little bit about, let's see here in my video, proof of death, um, and this one here. I do believe we talked about that in this previous video. All right, so the idea is that, okay, yes, it's a little bit tricky to so the point is that, fertilized ova, fail to implant, you know, you know, without the birth control pill. So um, is it the birth control pill that she prescribed that caused the death of the fertilized ova of the baby? Well, okay, all right, that's a causation there. So the causation is also what is it? It's a roadblock in securing indictments, right? So all these roadblocks here. It's just so convenient that the greatest crime. And let's make no mistake, all right? This is not impossible to obtain. This proof is not impossible to obtain. I would suggest that it is proven beyond any doubt at all. Right, it's provable beyond any doubt at all, and there's some technological limitations in this generation, or whatever, but this is happening, right? This is certainly happening, and if it's not happening, then just because the evidence wasn't obtainable. Sorry, if it is happening, let's say, for example, the evidence is difficult to obtain and it's inconvenient. Does that mean that it didn't happen? Right? No. All right. You see what I'm saying there? All right. So let's say, for example, this is happening, and it is. All right. This certainly is happening. Right. She is causing the death, early embryonic death. Right. So that's what's happening. I'm telling you, that's what's happening. Right. And then let's say, for example, right, the evidence, that direct evidence that we just talked about in today's video is inconvenient or challenging or difficult to obtain. Does that mean that it didn't happen and she's in the clear? No, no. See what I'm saying there? So, in practical terms, under current legal doctrine in most jurisdictions, the first and fifth elements are the most difficult barriers. Pre-implantation embryos are generally not recognized as separate legal persons for criminal homicide purposes. And individual causation is scientifically untraceable. Without those foundations, culpable negligence cannot be legally established, even if one believes morally that harm occurred. Okay. So legally speaking, culpable negligence would require a shift in personhood recognition, which we talked about, demonstrable risk evidence, no documented knowledge of that risk, and proof of reckless disregard, all supported by admissible evidence, right? So let's go back. So number one is the legally protected person, right? A legally protected person. So does it make sense, right, that the government does not recognize the embryo as a legally, protected person that has a, the doctor would have a duty of care onto this embryo? What? Of course not. It doesn't make any kind of sense. Who would seriously put forth that argument that this baby, this embryo, the embryonic stage, is not a person, would have to, what kind of nonsense claim is that? Right? Where's the evidence of that? Right? That is a nonsense claim. That's a garbage claim, and we must reject that claim. So if we reject that claim, what is left? Let's go back. The embryonic, the microscopic embryo, right? It's not a very big baby, a very, very small baby, right? That we have all been there, right? Is worthy of the right to life. Inalienable, has a inalienable right to life. All right, so that's number one. All right, so there's an error, right? So we can establish that there is an error, right? There is an error in the determination, and everybody makes mistakes, but this is a rather serious mistake to make. But it is a mistake, and it's a mistake. Now, a foreseeable and substantial risk of serious harm or death, right, of embryonic death, right? We need some scientific evidence that the drug creates this type of risk of post-fertilization embryonic death. Okay, the death of a legally protected person. Okay, number three, the knowledge of that risk. Well, the only thing I'm worried about there is if the doctor is just so ignorant of how the pill works. He just writes a prescription that he doesn't even know how the pill works or whatever. But that's 99 to 1 that it would not be that. But no, don't make no mistake. Dr. Michelle Down knows the risk that embryonic death will occur. She knows that, right? And she's writing this pill to these perfectly healthy women that have nothing wrong with them to suppress their natural bodily function. Right, so she knows the risk. It just, But anyway, there is conscious disregard and reckless indifference. Is sometimes to these minor aged females that don't have no way to understand the mechanism of action. The brain development isn't adequate at that point, and not enough so to be able to understand that these birth control pills are causing a serious risk, right, to directly and indirectly. Most of all, most seriously, is the death of the innocent child, a death of the innocent child, and then causation. Okay, so would the embryo would have otherwise implanted successfully? Would that embryo, did the pill cause the embryonic death that the embryo would have otherwise, successfully implemented? Well, that's a question. But no, I do thank you very much for tuning in. And you see, we're just hashing out the law because I mean that's what we have to do at this point in time. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video.